Okay, everyone, let's get started. Welcome to the webinar today, which is about keeping ahead of your competition on Google. And specifically, we're talking about Google AdWords today, and I've got a little presentation for you now. So there's a little picture, obviously. Let's try and keep ahead. And definitely the topic today, which is about AdWords and mobile phones, is about keeping ahead of your competition. We've had quite a lot of action in that area in the last 18 months, but particularly over the last 6 to 12 months. So it's getting hotter and hotter, and there's a few converging forces there. And the sorts of experiences we're seeing are that clients of ours are finding that other businesses, other related veterinary businesses or pet-related businesses are getting their ads in front of our clients, which is legal, of course, but it's causing some disruption in that people are losing clients or they're having clients confused. And this is something which, as I started with, has happened relatively recently. The tools have been around for a long time. So Google AdWords has been around for quite a few years now, but it's been evolving as a force. And one of the key drivers of that is that consumers are trusting AdWords. And if a consumer trusts the ads, then that drives the use of ads. And for your overall sort of large picture benefit, AdWords is Google's #1 revenue source. It accounts for something around 90% of their revenue. And if you have a look at their quarterly results, you'll see that it is a very, very large revenue source for them. So it's important to Google. And the good thing about AdWords is that it's good. It's important to Google that it works for the consumer. And if we understand that as a profession or as people using AdWords, that it's important that the AdWords work for the consumer, you'll get a very good result. All right, any questions before we kick off, before I start the process? No, great. All right, let's start. So what we're going to do is we're going to cover what is Google AdWords, how most vets are invisible to most consumers, and how that's related to AdWords, how AdWords can actually help that. So let's start with the problem. It's always good to start with what the problem is. It's two parts to this problem. The first one is that 80% of local business search by consumers is done from mobile phones now. This is changing really fast. It wasn't that long ago. It's probably 2000 and around about 2010, just before 2010, that mobile search for local business was about 1%. And you can imagine why. We've got, there's been a massive improvement in the way that mobile phones work. Internet access has improved, and so consumers have become used to using them. The second part of the problem, which is that it's one problem, it's got two parts, is that most vet clinics are invisible on mobile phones for key surrounding suburb searches. So another way of saying that is if a consumer is standing in a suburb surrounding your practice, that would be the adjacent suburb, most practices are invisible. And we'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. It's very important, obviously, because if you need to understand that that's a problem for your practice before you would then consider using a tool like AdWords. And for a lot of you attending today, that might be the first time you've heard that. And I'll show you a way to actually test it for yourself. So why is this happening? Why is it that most vets are invisible to consumers when those consumers are searching in their surrounding suburbs? Well, first of all, most vets have not adapted their web presence to the changing environment. So just a little bit of background to that. And when I talk about most vets, well, it is most vets, because about, I would say 10 to 15% of clinics have made significant improvements to their web presence. So there's a massive number of practices out there who have not. So historically, what vets and people who owned and ran vets practices said was they wanted a website because, inverted commas here, because you need to have a website. And that was really the year 2000 drive. And if you remember when Patalia came out, which was a ProVet product, there was a real flurry to get websites. And in fact, the Patalia model was about driving e-com business, which didn't eventuate. But most people who have a website because you need to have a website. It's not to drive business. And certainly most of those practices are not measuring the performance. So a lack of measurement means that a clinic may not have noticed that few people are calling them from online. So basically what that means is that when they first got their website, might have been 10 years ago, or they started with their website 10 years ago, web calls weren't a big part of generating business for a practice. And if you never knew how many you had and you're not measuring it and you don't notice that things are changing, then you won't know that you're missing out on a lot of business. And now that the web or phones are your number one source of new and repeat business, it's really important to actually have a look at that. So basically, a positive spin on that is for the clinics that have not kept up to date, there's a huge potential to improve. And of course, there are practices, I mentioned sort of top 15% that do keep up to date. And you talk to any of those clinics about the process when they did start AdWords, if it was a successful process for them, you'll hear them say it made a big difference. That makes sense? No questions yet? Okay. So let's just get ourselves on the map about what we're talking about. I've got a couple of diagrams which will attempt to describe what's happening. So basically we're talking about search results. So it's when someone picks up their phone and they're looking for a vet. And the most important search terms for veterinary practice is the word vet and then the suburb after that, or near me, which is sometimes people use the word near me instead of a suburb, or they just put in the word vet. And because the phone knows where the person's standing, it's looking in that area. Now, Google is trying to give the consumer the best result, and Google understands that vet practices are local businesses. So where possible, you'll get a local result. And if you look at these three screens here to orient ourselves, the first one here is a listing which is showing the Google My Business listing. So that is not AdWords, that's Google My Business. So that's a topic for another day. And it's one of the three pillars of an effective online presence. Google My Business. You would have heard me talk about that if you've heard our webinars before. This second one here has an ad at the top. This is Google AdWords, which we are talking about today. So you'll often see them appearing at the top of the screen. And on the third one here, we have right down the bottom here, we have the website. So these three areas, Google My Business, AdWords, and the organic search result, which is organic means Google's looking for the actual website, are the three pillars of effective search. And you don't want to be spending any effort anywhere else. And the corollary of that, or the flip side, is you do want to be spending all your effort on those three. So most practices don't spend effort on them at all. And so you've got a great opportunity to improve your performance by looking at these. And today we're looking at the one in the middle here, AdWords. So if we just look at the AdWords one for a minute here, you can see that the screen size here, this is a older iPhone 6 series, and it doesn't really matter which one you've got. Google will adjust the display to fit the phone, but you can see there's very little real estate or space. So in this screen here, you've got an ad, then you've got a map, which is Google My Business, which runs down to the bottom here. So there's no room for the website, and there's no room for any other clinics. So if someone does this search in that area and that's what they see, which clinic are they going to call? And of course, they're going to call Eltham. And that applies to people who don't go to Eltham. They might go to another practice. It applies to, or some of those people, it applies to people who obviously who are Eltham vet clinic clients, but also applies to people who haven't got a vet yet. So it's very, very important. Number one message is to be visible on the screen for the main searches for your practice. All right, so next screen. This is the question that's really important to ask, and it's relevant to whether you use AdWords or not, is will they see you? And it does depend on a few things. And we've already said that if they're standing in your suburb, it's very likely they'll see you regardless of how you've managed your online performance. Assuming you have a very, very basic website, which is the case for almost every practice, it's most likely Google will understand that you're a vet in the area and give the organic search for that clinic when that person's standing in your suburb. However, if they're standing in the surrounding suburb, it's very unlikely, very, very unlikely. 90% chance you won't be seen. And then if you have taken steps to improve your visibility, there's a very good chance you will be seen. You can't guarantee you'll be seen in those surrounding suburbs all the time, but it makes a huge difference. And we'll talk about what sort of difference it makes in a minute. So here's a little diagram to reiterate, you may say labour the point, but it's the number one point for online marketing about this is the most important thing for getting new people or getting people to call you in online marketing. So in the centre here is the suburb that the clinic is located in, and in that circle of that suburb that Google understands is that suburb, then it's most likely you're visible to people in that area. And in the surrounding suburbs, it's very likely you'll be invisible. And great news is you can fix that. Here's a couple of examples. I'll just give you a moment to have a look at that. This is a person searching for a vet in St Kilda. Now, they might put in the word vet St Kilda, they might put in the word vet if they're standing in St Kilda. Anyway, Google understands they're looking for a vet in St Kilda. Now, if you look at the result that's come up here, it looks like Google's given them a vet in St Kilda. This is an ad, by the way, Google AdWords, but it's actually a clinic in an adjacent suburb. So this whole space all the way down here, just before the map starts, is the ad. And you can see that it takes up almost the entire phone, and there's no way that a person who's got that on their screen is going to then look harder. The majority of people will trust what they see there and call that clinic, which is the Swan Street Vet, which is not in St Kilda. And Swan Street will pick up a whole bunch of clients in that area that were probably looking for the St Kilda Vet or looking for one closer. Okay, so let's have a look at another one just to show the point. This is another, this is in New South Wales. This person wants a clinic in Narellan, which is an area of New South Wales, and you can see the first thing that comes up is a Green Cross ad, which takes up most of the screen. So Green Cross will be picking up a bunch of those people ringing for that from that area. It's going to check a question. Okay, so Louise asked how much it's going to cost to do an ad. Well, let's come to that, Louise, because that's part of explaining how it works. It's a really good question. So just to show you the point there, that if you're not visible, they're going to call you. They're going to call someone else, and you'll find people in your area potentially who are advertising, like Green Cross is here, and they'll be taking clients. They'll be getting new clients, and they'll be getting some of your clients to call them and make appointments with them. That's a good question, Louise. We'll definitely come to that. Lou, I should say. All right, so what I want to show you, so you can understand what it's like in your environment, is actually how to search for your own practice. Because a lot of people, when I tell them this and show them this, they do the search on their phones and they get a result that shows that appears that they're actually doing pretty well. And it's really important, if you haven't heard this message before, that you understand that when you're searching for your own clinic, you actually use what we call private mode or incognito mode. In this case, we have a screen you can see here, which is using the browser called Safari. Now, a lot of you will have Safari on your phones, and a lot of you will have Chrome. In Safari's case, it's called private mode, and in Chrome's case, it's called incognito mode. Do it on your phone. And when you get into your browser to have a look for a vet, in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see these two little squares. This is for Safari. You click on those before you do your search, and you'll get a screen that says private, or a button that says private. You click on private, and then you do your search. And what that does is it blocks Google from understanding who you are. And because Google knows that you've looked for your own practice a lot before, it will be trying to give you your result all the time. We don't want that. We want you to see a result of a consumer who doesn't know you, doesn't have any connection with you, or they even might be a good client of yours, but they rarely look you up. We want that sort of result. So if anyone has any further questions about that, I encourage you to do it if you can, during this webinar, so you can ask any questions about how to get it done better. But that's if you're unclear. But this is how you do it. So when you start doing a search for that, what I want you to do is search for, use your the word vet, and then your suburb that your clinic's located in. Have a look, and then do one with the word vet, and then an adjacent or surrounding suburb, and see what comes up. All right, so let's get into how to fix it. And this is where Lou will be getting to what it costs to run it. So here's a list of important points. So basically, how to fix it is get Google AdWords. Now, Google AdWords is not the only thing. We talked about 2 other tools before. You need to make sure your website's working properly. You need to make sure Google My Business is working properly. But the third one is AdWords, and we're focusing on AdWords. So get AdWords. Now, the way it works is you will pay Google to have an ad placed in front of consumers in your geographic locations, the ones you want to be targeting. And Lou was asking before, how much does it cost to place an ad? And the cost to place an ad is highly variable. It depends on how well you run the ads. You can pay somewhere between $1 and up to $5. Some people have even been paying $10 for an ad. And the key to it is that if you structure your ads properly and you target the right terms, you can control how much you're paying for the ads. And you want to be spending the right amount of money to get the right number of phone calls. So, Lou, the answer is there's not actually an answer other than the fact that we aim to have ads placed at about $1. There's no point having an ad for $1 if it doesn't generate a phone call. And likewise, equally, if the only way to get phone calls was to spend $5 for an ad, then we would probably do that. But summarising the performance over all the practices we look at, we pay about $1 an ad, and we get about 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 of those people that click on those ads call the clinic. So this is a very important point about measurement. We need to measure the AdWords performance to know whether or not we're actually generating that it's worth doing. Because there's no point having an ad there that no one clicks on, but which if they don't click on it, you don't get charged. But if they do click on it and they don't ring you, it's a waste of money. So the point here I've made here is that Google AdWords can lift your phone calls 10 to 20% instantly. So that's if you've set it up correctly and you've got what we consider to be the general optimum setup, which would apply to most of the practices here today. You'll get a 10 to 20% instant growth. You might get more. But I think if we think about 10% growth as conservative, that's absolutely significant and worth it straight away. And these will generate, and what our aim is to generate calls for around $5. So that means that if every time someone clicks on an ad, it's costing $1. We want every 4th to 5th person to ring. Just because you click on an ad doesn't mean they call you. Once they called you, then that's up to you guys to convert them into appointments, and so it's going to cost you $5 to get someone on the phone. That's actually very good. That's our PetPack benchmark. And just to put that in perspective, if you're using other online tools, like say Yellow Pages or Census, we had one client the other day was spending $70 to get a call. So $5 versus $70. Google AdWords is the most effective way of spending money with Google. In fact, it's the only way you can spend it with Google, but it's the most effective use of your dollar when you're trying to get more people to call you. All right, here's some results. Reedy Creek, Justin Ward, he had dramatic success with AdWords. So basically, I'm just reading off his notes here. Since starting AdWords, we've become visible. Businesses continue to grow at a strong rate, and we attribute AdWords to bringing in a whole bunch of new business. So one of the other key points that he says is, I couldn't do this by myself. And coming back to Lou's comments before, it's actually a very complex process running AdWords. Anyone here can run AdWords, but if you're not focusing on doing it and doing it all the time, it's really difficult to be effective. So that's what we do. We have team members that do AdWords only, and we do it for all of our clients. And it's just practice makes perfect, because the system's changing all the time. You really need someone who's smart and on it all the time to make sure we're getting the best result. And so I definitely recommend that you outsource AdWords if you're going to do it seriously. So this is a bit about how it works. And look, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the detail here. In fact, if you are interested in the detail, we'll be happy to discuss it with you one-on-one, and probably better with someone else on my team than myself. But basically, if I just go through some of the key things, we set a budget and a schedule, which is a daily spend. So we'll say to you, look, how much do you want to spend? And you might say, well, how much do you recommend? And we would recommend you have a budget of $10 to $20 per day. It doesn't mean that it will all be spent, but that money means that Google has the capacity to run ads right up until that budget point for that day, because some days are busier than others, or there might be a run on people wanting to get to the clinic. You know, it's super hot weather or something. You need capacity in your budget to actually allow for that fluctuation. The second one is radius. We look at the geographic radius around practices. So that's very important, because you don't want an ad appearing on the other side of the city. If it does, and let's say the ad just says vet services or whatever the ad is, and someone sees the ad, clicks on it, and then they realise you're on the other side of the city, they're not going to call you. So that's an example of poor conversion, and it just wastes your money. We have different ad groups, and really the key thing here is location. Location is the biggest one. There are some services that we target as well, but location is really the most powerful one. And there are a couple of details there, which I won't go into. So measuring success. At the end of the day, what we want to do is get people on the phone or online bookings for you guys at the right price, which is about $5. And there's a lot of bits and pieces associated with measurement that we look at. So click-through rate is what percentage of people actually clicking on those ads. CPC, cost per click, is the cost. Lou was asking me about before. What's the cost, when they click on the ad? But also there are other things too. We want to look at the number of phone calls that come straight off the ads, because if you look at those ads, sometimes people will ring you directly from the ad. Other times, and most of them, will come to your website first before they call. So both of those things need to be tracked, because if you add them up together, it's a significant number of phone calls. And here's another case study from Joe at Hoppers Crossing, Victoria, which is a really interesting one. And it talks a bit more about the competitive nature of AdWords. So you would have noticed, and one of the reasons why you're probably here today is because you started to see other clinics advertising on phones, or you've heard, or you've seen them using AdWords. And this is a very good example where Joe found that his clients were calling the wrong clinic. So these are good clients. They wanted to come and see Joe, but they were ringing the wrong clinic. And luckily, they then rang Joe, found out how to contact him, and said, "Look, I thought I rang you, but I rang a different clinic." And basically, what was happening was a competitor advertising in the same area, and it was confusing Joe's clients. Now, it's important to note that any of you guys here today who have anyone in your area, anyone's using AdWords, you will have clients of yours who will have clicked on ads and rung the wrong clinic, and they will have gone to that wrong clinic, and you may not be aware of that. So Joe was lucky that some of his clients actually told him. So Joe rang us and said, "Look, can you fix it?" And we certainly could fix it. Generally, when we run an AdWords campaign, we don't have ads appearing in that core suburb of Hoppers Crossing, because before, as I mentioned, generally the vet clinic website will dominate that area. But in this case, the competitor was running ads and it was confusing people. So we ran ads to actually target Hoppers Crossing. And as soon as Google sees that there's a clinic advertising in that one area, it will not allow the other clinic but it won't show the ads for the competitive clinic. So it's a great defensive process to put ads about your own clinic in your own suburb if you've got a lot of competition. As you can see, Joe said here that spending money on marketing is barely tolerable for him. It never has been, but he has been very happy with that process. So that's good. Any questions about that before we go any further? And Lou, does that answer your question about the running the ads? You might want a bit more detail on that. Okay, so let's have a look at the impact of AdWords. And what we want to do is basically measure. We want to measure the value of getting those calls. So let's say, so the top line is you get more calls, get more new clients, and you get more old clients returning. That's a very interesting thing. If you've been losing clients to competitors in the area because of various things, but particularly your online presence is not good, then you'll find once you start doing AdWords, they start coming back again. We've had clinics telling us that's quite interesting. So let's say you get an extra 50 calls a month. This is based on a clinic that's generating about 500 calls a month from their website and Google My Business. So an extra a 10% increase in calls, which is conservative and realistic. So an extra 50 calls a month, and each of those is worth $250 for an appointment. Well, that's $12,500 extra per month. And you probably already spotted the over-exaggeration there. The exaggeration is I've assumed all of those calls get booked into appointments. We know that's not the case. So let's be more conservative again and consider only 30% are booked as appointments. So 30% of that is $3,750 a month. So realistically and conservatively, you could expect an increase in revenue on a monthly basis of $3,750 a month if you run AdWords, which is an ROI of 7.5, which is very high. And that's when you're using PetPak's Google AdWords service. So it's worth doing. All right, so what to do next? We've got two options. One, you can buy our Google AdWords service, which is from $282 a month. And we'll be happy to do that for you. If you wanted that, you can just email us directly or call us. The details are coming up. If, however, you're wondering, which is a very valid question, why would I invest in Google AdWords when I don't know what's happening now? And it's relevant to most of you because you haven't done the measurement. Quite a few people have asked us this question. So the answer to that is that I would suggest you get an assessment done. And that is a service that we do. It's how your clinic is performing online now. And it will give you a detailed report, for those of you who haven't seen us talk about the reports before, of how you're going. And you can then go and take that and you can choose to come and work with us, or you can do it yourself. If you now have someone else you know who's good with AdWords, you can use that as well. Just checking those chat. Okay, so there's a little bit of detail about the online performance assessment, which is what I'm recommending for those of you who are interested but not sure how you're going. There's a lot of detail here, but basically the report will give you analysis of Google search performance, as well as a whole bunch of other things. But the analysis of Google search performance will tell you very clearly, and you'll be able to see it, whether or not you're performing well or not. If you're not sure yourself, or you want I suppose a third-party reference point. And then you can decide whether you make your investment. Now, the online performance assessment costs $375, and you can also add a social media analysis component to it for an extra $100, so $475. It's a very effective service. It's used by lots of people. And what I would like to offer to everyone today is that we'll do a free online performance assessment, including the social media component, for the first 3 respondents. So first in best dressed, if you'd like it, just drop me a note. You can do it now straight in the chat, or you can email. Offer closes 5 o'clock tomorrow, and or you can call us. There's a phone number there as well. Now let me just check if it's 2:30, which is great. Just seeing whether you have any more questions, and please. All right, so that's the first online performance is done. Kevin, that's for you. Yep. And Lou asked a question about, does the Google AdWords charge include all the costs for Google plus you doing the hard work? Let's just go back to that screen so we're clear. So I said here, one of your options is you can buy PetPak Google AdWords from $282 a month. That's the cost that we charge you. In addition to that, there is the cost of the ads, and the cost of the ads will cost you. We'd recommend a budget of $10 a day. You might end up spending $200 a month, something like that. And the amount you spend with Google is totally flexible. You might want to go hard and get more calls, so you might want to spend more. Might want to increase your bids, but just as a sort of a ballpark figure, we'd set a budget of about $10 a month. Does that make sense, Luke? Great. All right, guys. Are there any other questions? Please let me know now. If you'd like any more information, just let us know. You can email us. You can just reply to the webinar email, or you can ring us, 039-690-6253, or you can email and be happy to answer any questions. And thanks everyone for joining us today, and we look forward to sending out in the follow-up email. I've got a couple of Google reports which are quite interesting if you're interested about how different industries are, why Google AdWords will work basically for vets. That's obviously another angle. So give us a buzz if you need more help. All right, thank you very much, and I'm going to sign off and have a great afternoon and rest of the short week. So thank you very much. See you. Bye.